College football season this year is different. How so? It's not just the breakout success of Indiana's Hoosiers and the crushing disappointment of Penn State, although both are noteworthy developments. It's the golden parachutes being doled out to bad coaches from public schools. Hello and welcome to USA Today's The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. Some of the biggest parachutes we've seen so far this year include Penn State's payout to coach James Franklin to the tune of $49 million. We also have another big payout to Brian Kelly at LSU. So far across the country, we're looking at millions in go-away payments for failing college football coaches from public colleges where many students continue to take on exorbitant debt to earn a degree. Is this okay? Here to help me dig into all of it is USA Today's senior national college football writer, Matt Hayes, and USA Today sports project reporter, Steve Berkowitz. Matt and Burke, thank you for hopping on.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
Steve, let's start with these two big payouts. Is the Brian Kelly payout the largest payout for a failing college football coach ever?
No, actually, there's one that's larger. It was to the amount that Texas A&M paid to Jimbo Fisher several years ago, which was roughly $75 to $77 million.
Matt, just for kicks, I wanted to see how Franklin's $49 million package might impact Penn State's undergraduate population with just over 48,000 right now. If it was divvied out among the students instead of all going to James Franklin, it would net $1,000 per student. Are there ethical lines being crossed here?
I think when you start talking about paying coaches a lot of money to coach football, and then you start getting into, well, these teams, when they win big, they place the university on a higher pedestal, which means you get more students coming to the school, you get more boosters giving money to the school, you get more grants. It's all this stuff that they believe is the impact of the front porch of sports, which is football, and the sport that makes the most money and generates the most money. For me, looking at it, I think sports-wise, from football, this is the sport that generates the revenue. This is the sport far and away more than any other sport on a college campus. And there are many, many university presidents and obviously athletic directors who believe that it transcends sports, that it becomes an issue for the university to use as a tool to get any number of things that they couldn't get without it.
Okay, Steve, let's talk about where this golden parachute money is coming from then. Are there donations that are earmarked for this, or is it coming from revenue earned by the sports teams?
It's probably a combination of both. I mean, there are instances in which athletic directors hear from donors that they want the football coach to be fired, and the donors, help put up the money for that specific purpose. There are other instances where athletics departments use reserve funds that they've built up over the years, where they've had surpluses of revenue over expenses. There are a variety of different ways for schools to deal with this. But the thing to keep in mind on a taxpayer basis is that the entirety of the college sports and higher education ecosystem is underpinned on those all being nonprofit, tax-exempt organizations. The schools are tax-exempt. Donations to the schools provide people with tax deductions. The NCAA is operating as a nonprofit. All of the conferences operate as nonprofits. Many of the bowl games that are organized, those are operating as nonprofits. So all of this revenue and all of the money that's washing around in this system is tax sheltered and tax advantaged, which means that, on a certain level, taxpayers are underwriting this across the board.
And Steve and I have also talked about this. It's almost as if this money is fungible because it just goes from one place to another place to another place. And at the end of the day, you don't know where it is. The fear, I guess, for some university personnel is if you've got a big booster who's willing to put up $25 million to be part of a buyout for a coach who's not winning, why can't he give $25 million to the School of Journalism? Why can't he give $25 million to other research being done at the university? Or if he's doing that, that's taking away from the money he would be giving to other research situations away from sports.
Well, Matt, I'm going to circle back to something you just talked about, how these coaches are able to negotiate these incredible deals with public schools. High risk, high reward situations. What are the stakes, though, for the schools?
I mean, they're big. There's no doubt about it because there's so much money now involved if you look at the two super conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, which make considerably more money than the other conferences, you're talking about the Big Ten, I believe, is somewhere in the 70 million mark they gave each school this past year. Burke would know the numbers better than I do. And I think the SEC is right around the low to mid 50 millions. And then now you're also talking about the college football playoff, which they're going to expand. And right now they get annually about 1.2 billion with a B annually for that playoff. When it expands, it will be more. So you're talking about a lot of money annually being doled out to these schools. So if you have a coach who's not winning and can't get you into that playoff, then you got to reassess and start to think, okay, is it worth us paying that kind of money? You and I, Dana, look at that in Burke, and we look at this and we think, $50 million to sit home and do nothing? You got to be kidding me. How do I get that job? But look at what they've done. Look at what Penn State did. Penn State was a play away from playing for the national championship last year. 6 games into this season, they fire their coach. It's remarkable what Penn State has done. Remarkable. LSU's similar, but it's kind of, Brian Kelly was kind of going bad there at LSU. Billy Napier, who got $22 million at Florida, he just couldn't get it going in his 4 years. So you can kind of understand those firings. The buyouts clearly is still just shocking. But we're at the point now, honestly, Dana, where $20 million is kind of like, all right, so. And then we're talking about this right now. Nebraska, because it was worried that Penn State was going to steal its coach, extended Matt Rule 2 more years for $25 million total. This is a coach who's 18-15 at Nebraska, who has a losing record against power conference teams, who has not beaten a ranked team in 3 years at Nebraska, whose teams are 1-7 in the month of November when it really matters most. And right now, his 6-2 team, if they follow the path of what his 2 previous teams did in November, they could have given a guy a $25 million extension for a 7-5 record or 6-6 record. It's ridiculous at this point.
Burke, what's your take on this, on the stakes for the schools?
I mean, the stakes for the schools, like Matt said, are gigantic. I mean, and the amounts of money that are involved here are considerable. And when you're like at a school, for example, like at Tennessee, you go like, well, Tennessee's football stadium seats roughly 100,000 people. It's like if you draw 80,000 people for a football game at Tennessee, you go like, wow, that's a really big crowd. Well, at Tennessee, the incremental difference between having 80,000 people in the building and 100,000 people in the building, when even if those tickets are paid for, if people don't show up, there's a huge economic impact in terms of, the number of T-shirts that they're selling and sodas that are being sold and lots of other things that are going on there. There was a research group at the University of Wisconsin that recently released a report that was written about by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that tried to quantify the economic impact in the Madison area of the team not playing well. And these were findings that were not accepted by the athletics department, but they talked about the overall economic impact for, just on the local area. And so the stakes on these things are huge and they're enormous. And the amounts of money that schools put into their athletics programs, which, again, like Matt said, money is fungible. So you can use, the school putting money in for one place that's ostensible purpose is one thing, means that they don't have to spend the revenue that they get from tickets on something else. And there are schools in the power conferences where the institution is putting $20 million or more into the athletics program every year to help fund the operations. University of Colorado, which is what we focused on in this year's main story about coaches' pay, has been putting in over $20 million each of the past 2 years to help fund the entirety of the athletics program. And after last season, they gave Deion Sanders a raise that took his pay from $5.9 million to $10 million annualized. So, obviously the University of Colorado thinks this is pretty important.
Matt, have there been any rumblings from the other students at these public universities about these firings?
Oh, I'm sure there has. I'm sure there are students on campus that are wondering why you're paying a guy $50 million to not coach. Of course. How could you not? If I was on campus back in the day and when I'm on campus, if a coach would have gotten fired and that would have been the situation, I'd have been like, you got to be kidding me. We're using these old computers here, in the journalism school, and you can't use some of that money to get us some new computers. Of course, I absolutely could see that. But I don't know that it's to the point, Dana, where there's going to be some kind of revolt or some kind of sit in or anything like that. I think they're just kind of like, okay, this is weird. This is how the world works, and I don't like it. But I guess if we want a winning team, this is the cost of doing business. And at the end of the day, it's that old word, that old cliche, the cost of doing business is what is running this mill right now.
There is unhappiness about some of this stuff with members of faculty. I mean, again, going back to the story that Brent Scrodenboer on our staff did primarily around Deion Sanders, the school has told the faculty that they need to be prepared for belt tightening. There's a lot of instability in what's going on with federal and state support of colleges and universities. A lot of these schools are staring at declining enrollments. So, money is tight on college campuses. And then at the same time, you have coaches who are making $8 million, $10 million, and then getting these kinds of buyouts to not coach. And that creates a certain level of incongruity on those campuses. Now, whether the faculty has influence or students or, their parents who are paying those bills have influence. I mean, there are schools that charge student athletic fees that are mandatory, that build into the cost of you attending school, that affect the amount of money you're having to borrow to go to school. I mean, all of these things are a piece of the puzzle in this overall environment. And, whether anybody being happy enough about it to disrupt it, that remains to be seen.
Finally, I want to ask you both, as experts in covering college football, what surprised you the most about these stories? Matt, I'll start with you.
Honestly, Dana, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that might be the most surprising thing of all, because I see where this is headed. We've all seen where this is headed. In 2021, when the NCAA decided that not only were they going to allow students to earn off their name, image, and likeness, which I think should have been done a long time ago, but they did it with zero guardrails. They did it knowing that the states of California and Florida started out 16 months earlier saying, look, in July of 2021, our student athletes are going to be able to earn off their name, image, and likeness. And the NCAA knew for 16 months this was going to happen and had zero guardrails. So what did they do? Not only did they allow NIL, they also said, what the heck, we'll just open it up and we'll have free player movement. And then everybody started to complain about it. Shocking that everyone's complaining about something that was set up. They knew that they had to do something and they did nothing, which is really kind of the MO for the NCAA. So am I surprised? Not in the least.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's nothing surprising about this. And I'll take it to sort of in a slightly different direction. I mean, because I've been through with doing this work for USA Today, going back to 2006, when we first started doing looks at college football coaches' compensation. People have always asked me, is there a ceiling to what college football coaches can get paid? Is the idea of athletes getting paid, is that going to constitute a drag or some kind of a governor on what college football coaches are paid? And I've yet to see evidence of anything that will constitute a drag on coaches' salaries. And in the upcoming year, the Indiana University just gave a huge raise to its coach, Curt Cignetti, who's been incredibly successful in a very short period of time. And with Indiana now talking about Indiana and Cignetti have agreed to an arrangement under which he'll be paid a little over $11 million beginning next season, and it'll go up from there. And because there's so much emotion involved in these decisions, and there's such an interest in winning that, somebody's always going to think, hey, if we pay the money, we'll get the best guy. And that's the guy who's going to win us a national championship, or that's the coach that's going to get us farther in football than we've ever gotten before. Then that's what we're going to do. And that's what's going to happen.
Love talking to you both. Matt and Steve, thank you so much for being on The Excerpt.
Thank you, Dana.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.